W.E.B. Du Bois Remembered. William Edward Burghardt Du Bois, otherwise known as W.E.B. Du Bois, was an African American activist in the first half of the 20th century. He was born in Great Barrington, Massachusetts on February 23, 1868. Du Bois was an only child. At the time, Great Barrington's population was comprised of about 5,000 whites and around 50 blacks, Du Bois being one of them. He struggled with acceptance of himself as a child. His mother died when he was 16 years old. Du Bois was a hard-working student and excelled through school. He was the first African American to graduate from his high school and managed to graduate as the valedictorian. Du Bois went on to study at Fisk University, a black liberal arts college in Nashville, Tennessee. After moving to Tennessee, this is where Du Bois first encountered Jim Crow laws and was exposed to African American culture and what life was like for black people in the South. He started to think deeply and critically about racism in America. After earning his bachelor's degree at Fisk, he went on to Harvard to continue his education. Harvard denied Du Bois's degree from Fisk, so he went on to receive another bachelor's degree, master's, and was the first African American to receive a PhD from Harvard. Du Bois felt isolated at the university. After 6 o'clock, he was not allowed to be on campus, once stating, "I was in Harvard, but not of it." Du Bois later went on to study in Germany at the University of Berlin, but fell short of his PhD by 1 semester because his funds were declined, so he finished at Harvard. Du Bois's doctoral thesis, "The Suppression of the African Slave Trade in America," became the first book published by the Harvard University Press in 1896. Du Bois continued to study and analyze the lives of blacks in America and published many academic works. Among these works was the Philadelphia Negro, the first case study of a black community in the United States. In his study, he managed to point out that racism was a huge factor in the living and working conditions of African Americans. This is where he coined the phrase, "the talented tenth," a term he used to describe the prospect of 1 in 10 black men becoming leaders of their race. W.E.B. Du Bois became very popular around the nation when he openly opposed Booker T. Washington, a public black activist, and the Atlanta Compromise. This compromise was an agreement between Booker T. Washington, president of the Tuskegee Institute, African American leaders, and Southern white leaders, and stated that blacks would work for and submit to white political rule as long as they guaranteed that blacks would receive basic education and due process in law. Basically, blacks would not fight for justice and whites would provide education for blacks. This agreement had been made by multiple popular civil rights activists of the time, making Du Bois an outcast by whites and blacks alike. In 1903, as a rebuttal to Washington's stance, Du Bois published The Souls of Black Folk, a one-of-a-kind work which challenged Washington's ideas and pushed for black activists to combat racial oppression. He argued that Washington's position kept the black man down rather than freed him. This opposition eventually divided the leaders of the black community into 2 groups, conformist supporters and radical critics. In 1905, Du Bois founded the Niagara Movement, which was short-lived but eventually led to the founding of the NAACP, or National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, which he co-founded in 1909. Du Bois was the editor of the monthly magazine, The Crisis, which showcased what exactly was going on in the black community. Du Bois didn't agree with the compromising nature that had fallen on the NAACP and departed due to his disappointment of white power over blacks. Du Bois continued to write many books and articles, including Black Reconstruction in America, which ended up being a huge marker that was used during the civil rights movements in the 1960s. Du Bois identified as a communist and was open about his feelings toward the relationship of the U.S. and Russia. The government prosecuted Du Bois for his affiliation with the party. In 1961, he moved to Ghana, Africa, and became a citizen. He died in 1963. Du Bois's ideas, although not highly accepted in his generation, became a stepping stone in the civil rights movement of the 60s. Black activists like Malcolm X and Huey Newton took to his philosophies and used them to advance their stances toward racism.